After the great flood, when the world was still young, and the gods still walked close to men, the land of Epirus found its first kings. The ancient historians tell us that Phaethon, a companion of Pelasgus, ruled first among the Thesprotians and Molossians. Others say it was Deucalion and Pyrrha themselves who founded the sacred oracle of Dodona, where Zeus spoke through rustling oak leaves. But destiny had greater plans for this land. Generations later came Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Trojan War. He crossed into Epirus with his people, claimed the land as his own, and founded a royal bloodline that would rule for centuries. They were called the Pyrrhidae, named for Neoptolemus's childhood name, Pyrrhus. And so, even Achilles himself came to be worshipped in Epirus under the name Aspetus. But time erodes even noble blood. The kings who followed fell into obscurity, their power faded, their names forgotten. Until one man changed everything, Pyrrhus. He brought Greek language, Greek law, and Greek order to a land slipping into chaos. From him came Alcetus, then Erebus, and finally Aeacides, father of a child who would shake the ancient world. That child was named Pyrrhus. Born to Aeacides and Phthia of Thessaly, Pyrrhus entered a world already stained by ambition and betrayal. And while he was still an infant, fate struck. Faction tore Epirus apart. Aeacides was driven from the throne. His allies were hunted down and killed. And the enemies searched for one thing above all else: the child, Pyrrhus. In the dead of night, loyal men fled with the baby king in their arms. They ran through forests, through rain, through darkness, until they reached a raging river, swollen, violent, impassable. Behind them, their pursuers closed in. Shouting across the roar of water was useless, so one man stripped bark from a tree, scratched a desperate message into it, wrapped it around a stone, and hurled it across the flood. Help came, trees were cut, rafts were built, and by fate or by omen, the first man to reach the far shore was named Achilles. He lifted the child Pyrrhus into his arms, and destiny crossed the river. They brought the boy to Glaucius, king of the Illyrians. When Pyrrhus crawled to him, clutched his robe, and wept like a suppliant, the king knew this was no ordinary child. Glaucius defied kings, defied bribes, defied death itself, and raised Pyrrhus as his own. At 12 years old, Pyrrhus returned to Epirus at the head of an army, and he was crowned king. But Epirus was not done testing him. At 17, while Pyrrhus was away, his enemies struck again. His supporters were driven out. His wealth was seized. His crown stolen. Once more, Pyrrhus was a king without a kingdom. He did not despair. He joined Demetrius, fought at the great battle of Ipsus, and earned a reputation for courage that even kings respected. In Egypt, he proved himself through endurance, discipline, and strength, and through marriage, through loyalty, through patience. Pyrrhus returned. Epirus welcomed him, but another king stood beside him, Neoptolemus. Their rule was uneasy, their trust false. A plot was formed: poison, betrayal, murder, whispered at banquets. But Pyrrhus learned first. At a sacred feast, he invited Neoptolemus to dine, and there he killed him. Epirus had one king again. Now Pyrrhus turned outward, against Macedonia, against rivals, against fate itself. When generals challenged him, he answered. Steel met steel. Spears shattered. Blood soaked the earth. Pyrrhus himself charged into combat, wounding his enemy, breaking the phalanx and capturing thousands. The Macedonians did not hate him. They admired him. They said, "Others imitated Alexander the Great. Pyrrhus fought like him." Even Hannibal, centuries later, would name Pyrrhus the greatest general who ever lived. But ambition is never satisfied, and Pyrrhus was only beginning. The danger was now apparent. Demetrius's preparations were vast, too vast. Kings across the Greek world grew uneasy, and their messages poured in. They asked Pyrrhus why he waited, why he allowed his enemy to grow stronger, why he hesitated when Macedonia itself lay open before him. They reminded him of what he had lost: Corcyra, Lanassa, a wife who had turned away from him. She had sailed to Corcyra, invited Demetrius, and married him. The insult burned. At dawn, Pyrrhus advanced with speed. Beroea fell without resistance. Macedonia trembled. Demetrius's army wavered, not in hatred, but admiration. They whispered Pyrrhus's name. They saw his helmet, its towering crest, its goat's horns, and they crowned him king. But kings do not share power easily. Lysimachus demanded his portion. Macedonia was divided, and peace only sharpened their hatred. Soon, treachery followed treachery. The Macedonians were turned against Pyrrhus. Once again, a throne slipped from his grasp. Back in Epirus, Pyrrhus could have rested. He could have ruled in peace, but peace repelled him. Like Achilles, he could not endure idleness. And then, Italy called. Ambassadors promised Pyrrhus the world, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, Italy at his feet. Epirus stirred. The expedition began. The sea rose. Winds tore the fleet apart. Ships vanished into darkness. Pyrrhus threw himself into the waves, dragged ashore at dawn, exhausted, but unbroken. Only fragments of his army survived. Still, he marched. In Tarentum, pleasure ended. Gyms closed, festivals stopped, men were armed. Some fled, others followed. The Roman consul, Lavinus, advanced. Pyrrhus studied their camp, their order, their discipline. "These barbarians," he said, "are not barbarous. The Romans crossed the river. Shields flashed. Cavalry charged. Pyrrhus rode at the head of his men, brilliant in armor, calm amid chaos. A spear struck his horse. Another struck his enemy. Both fell. Death circled him. Mistaken identity spread. A Roman displayed Pyrrhus's armor. "Pyrrhus is dead," despair rippled through the Greeks, until Pyrrhus rode bareheaded through the ranks, alive, commanding. Then the elephants advanced. Horses screamed. Lines broke. The Thessalian cavalry charged. Rome fled. Victory, but costly. Too costly. Thousands lay dead, the best of Pyrrhus's men. This, history would later say, is a victory like defeat. Rome did not surrender. She raised new legions, spoke of war without fear. And so Pyrrhus sent Cineas to negotiate. In Rome, gifts were refused. Gold was scorned. And then, an old blind man was carried into the Senate, Appius Claudius. "Are you afraid," he thundered, "of Molossians and Chaonians? If Pyrrhus leaves Italy unpunished, others will come." The Senate roared its approval. The answer returned: leave Italy or fight. Cineas returned with warnings. "This Senate," he said, "is a council of kings. This people, a hydra." Fabricius refused gold, refused fear, refused even elephants. And Pyrrhus laughed, admiring Rome, even as he fought her. The war would continue. Battles would follow, victories as costly as defeat. And Pyrrhus's name would forever mean victory that destroys the victor. Among the Romans stood a man Pyrrhus could not conquer, Gaius Fabricius. Pyrrhus offered him power, wealth, command, to share his life as friend and general. Fabricius refused. "If your men knew me," he said calmly, "they would rather have me as king than you." Pyrrhus did not rage. He admired him, and so great was that admiration that he entrusted all Roman prisoners to Fabricius alone, allowing them to return home for Saturnalia on honor alone. They all returned. Rome punished any who delayed with death. Then came treachery. Pyrrhus's own physician offered Rome victory, poison for gold. Fabricius was disgusted. He warned Pyrrhus instead, not for his sake, but so Rome would never be accused of ending a war by deceit. Pyrrhus executed the traitor and sent his prisoners home. Yet peace still failed. Rome would not speak until Pyrrhus left Italy forever. Once more, war. At Asculum, Pyrrhus fought Rome again. The ground betrayed him. Forests, rivers, broken terrain, his cavalry useless, his elephants constrained. The first day ended in blood and darkness. On the second day, Pyrrhus forced the fight onto open ground. Elephants advanced. The Roman lines stood firm. They hacked at spears with naked swords, reckless of death, thinking only of killing. But valor could not stop the beasts. The elephants crushed them like a wave. Rome fled. Victory. But Pyrrhus counted the cost. Thousands dead, friends gone, generals lost, and Rome already raising new armies. Then Pyrrhus spoke the words that would immortalize him. "If we defeat the Romans in one more battle, we are utterly ruined." At once, new paths opened. Sicily called for deliverance. Greece called for a king. 2 crowns, 1 man. He chose Sicily. At first, triumph followed triumph. Cities surrendered. Carthaginians fled. At Eryx, Pyrrhus stormed the walls himself, first over the ramparts, cutting down defenders like a force of nature. The Greeks cheered him as a savior, but power changed him. He ruled harshly, compelled cities, took men by force. Allies became subjects. Subjects became enemies. When he executed Thonon, one of the very men who brought him to Sicily, the island turned against him. Sicily, he realized, was ungovernable, a storm-tossed ship. As he sailed away, Pyrrhus looked back and said, "What a battlefield we leave behind for Romans and Carthaginians." History would prove him right. Back in Italy, his allies were broken. The Samnites hesitated. Rome advanced. At Beneventum, Pyrrhus attempted a night attack. Darkness betrayed him. His army lost its way. Morning found them disordered, and Rome struck first. Elephants panicked. Roman javelins turned them back through Pyrrhus's own ranks. For the first time, Rome won decisively. Italy was lost. Pyrrhus returned to Greece, poorer, diminished, but unyielding. He won Macedonia, lost goodwill, sought new wars. Sparta resisted him, not with numbers, but with will. Women dug trenches. Old men stood in line. Pyrrhus was thrown from his horse at the gates of Sparta. The city endured. Still, he would not stop. Argos awaited. Fate followed. Pyrrhus was unmatched in courage, first among kings in battle, last in wisdom. What he won by brilliance, he lost by desire. Antigonus said it best. Pyrrhus is like a gambler who throws splendid dice, but never knows when to stop. His name survives, not as conqueror, but as warning. Victory that destroys the victor. Pyrrhus could not be still. Victory never satisfied him. Defeat never restrained him. Each success became the beginning of another gamble. Each failure demanded a new war. So when Aristeus of Argos secretly invited him in, Pyrrhus answered at once. But the march was costly. Arrius of Sparta harried his rear relentlessly. Gauls fell. Molossians were cut down, and fate closed in. The seer had warned him. One of his kin would die. In the confusion, Pyrrhus forgot the prophecy. He sent his son Ptolemy back to rescue the rear. There, amid the fighting, a Spartan band struck. A Cretan named Erissus ran forward, swift, decisive, and struck Ptolemy down. The prince fell. When Pyrrhus heard, grief became fury. He charged the Spartans himself, horse into men, spear into shield, blood into dust. Never had he seemed more terrible, never more invincible. When a Spartan nearly severed his reins, Pyrrhus slew him outright, then dismounted and slaughtered the rest on foot. It was vengeance, not war. Having paid for his son in blood, Pyrrhus marched on. Argos awaited. So did destiny. Antigonus already held the heights. Both kings were urged to withdraw. Antigonus gave hostages. Pyrrhus gave only words, and omens darkened. Sacrificial heads moved their tongues. A priestess screamed of corpses filling the city. An eagle vanished from the sky. Still, Pyrrhus advanced. At midnight, the gates were opened. The Gauls entered first. But the elephants jammed the passage. Towers were removed, then replaced. In darkness, in panic. The city awoke. Enemies poured in from all sides. Antigonus's troops, Spartans, Cretans, shouting drowned command. Streets swallowed formations. War became confusion. As daylight broke, Pyrrhus saw the hill of Aspis crowded with enemy shields. Then his eyes fell upon a bronze image, a wolf fighting a bull. He froze. An oracle returned to him. He would die when he saw the wolf and the bull in combat. For the first time, Pyrrhus chose retreat. Orders were sent, misunderstood. His son Helenus, instead of withdrawing, marched into the city with elephants and elite troops. Elephants blocked the gate. Another panicked, searching for its fallen rider, crushing friend and foe alike. Men were welded together in terror. Weapons killed allies as often as enemies. At the heart of the chaos rode Pyrrhus. He removed the crest from his helmet and charged. A spear struck his breast, not fatal. He turned to kill the man who threw it. From a rooftop above, an old woman watched. Her son was below. Facing Pyrrhus, she lifted a roof tile and threw it. The tile struck Pyrrhus at the base of the neck. His vision failed. His hands released the reins. The king of Epirus fell, unrecognized, beside a tomb, dragged into a doorway, staring death in the face. Even then, his gaze terrified the man sent to kill him. The sword shook. The blow was clumsy. The head came away slowly. Antigonus wept when he saw the head. He thought of his own fallen kin. He ordered Pyrrhus buried with honor. His body burned. His ashes returned. Friends spared. His son escorted home. Pyrrhus was unmatched in courage, unrivaled in battle, but never master of himself. He conquered kingdoms and lost them. He won victories and bled them dry. He chased greatness until greatness crushed him beneath a common roof tile. History remembers his name, not for what he built, but for what his victories destroyed. History remembers names, but it remembers lessons even more. Pyrrhus crossed seas, shattered armies, and bent kings to his will. Yet in the end, it was not Rome, not Sparta, not Carthage that defeated him. It was the inability to stop. If this story made you think about ambition, about victory, about the cost of never knowing when enough is enough, then take a moment. Leave a comment below with the lesson you took from Pyrrhus's life. Like this video so this story reaches others who still believe that winning is the same as triumph. And subscribe if you want more history told not as dates and names, but as human choices with consequences that echo across centuries. Because history doesn't repeat itself. but it does remember